Our guest today was one of 3 Quebecers abducted, beaten, and imprisoned by the Israeli military last month for his involvement with the global Sumud Flotilla. Ehab Lotayef and over 400 activists were on a mission to deliver aid to Gaza when Israel's Navy seized their vessels in international waters. They were then arrested, detained, and subjected to a litany of abuse. At least 67 of the detainees were later hospitalized for injuries that include broken ribs, broken arms, broken legs, and internal bleeding. There are reports of activists being stripped naked and forced into a cold prison cell, as well as multiple reports of detainees being sexually assaulted.
I was dragged into a darkened container ship on a prison boat. I was sexually assaulted.
I can't think of how many times I was punched and kicked in the face.
He said, "You're too old to be alive. You need to die."
Ehab himself was stabbed by a soldier while handing out water bottles to the other detainees. Since returning from the flotilla, Ehab has been recovering from his injuries, but was kind enough to join us this afternoon. Ehab is a longtime human rights activist, but he's also a poet and author of the book To Love a Palestinian Woman. We're grateful he could be on the show today. How did you prepare for this trip, knowing what was going to be on the other side?
Can I start by saying we did not know that it's going to be that violent, that punishing, that torturous from the beginning. That was beyond our expectations, really. I have participated in my first flotilla and my first imprisonment in Israel 15 years ago, 2011. Then it was a year after the Mavi Marmara, and the Israelis wanted to improve their image, so they were now I could say they were very nice to us. We knew year after year, and especially in the last 3 years, that Israel is becoming more crazy, doesn't care anymore about its image. So we expected the worst, but this was worse than the worst expected. We've seen, for example, the way the Itmar Ben Gvir treated the previous flotilla in the fall of 2025. And we said, well, that's bad. We should be prepared for that. But if I can talk about myself, and I think this kind of question needs to be directed to each individual, because I guess it differs from individual to individual. But I really found myself very comfortably in the place that no matter what they do to my body, they're not going to get to my soul, they're not going to get to my heart, they're not going to get to my mind. And strangely enough, as somebody who never had experienced violence as an adult, I mean, of course, as a teenager, we all experience violence somehow. But as an adult, I've never experienced really harsh violence in any way, nor did I inflict it on anybody. So I was away from that, from that environment. But I was surprised how I managed really to practice what I trained for. And I really found myself under the worst conditions of body pain, and which I could have gone much worse. Of course, there is no limit to how far that can go. But I found myself under control. So to try to answer your question directly, we trained by trying to be really peaceful in the face of the most violent actions from the other side, and we did some role playing.
That's what they I remember during the civil rights movement in the United States. That's what they would do, right? You would have these black Americans who would go to the Woolworth counter that was segregated, and they would get yelled at. And the challenge is you have to just maintain your peaceful disposition, but ahead of these actions, they would train at just being yelled at and berated. And so you were doing that.
Yes, we did.
Wow.
We did. And the last session of that we did was in Sicily, just before we launched. And we did it, or those who were not sailing did it to us by surprise as well once. Yeah. And they just came to us with balaclavas, and they were really rough. And that was the last lesson, because I realized at that point that if you decide to resist and then they break you, you would feel bad. But if you decide from the beginning that I won't resist, then there's nothing for them to they can't conquer you.
Yeah.
And that really worked.
I had heard, I've read about this a lot, and I'd heard that it was like the louder you screamed, the more they would hit you. Like the ones who just didn't make much of a fuss, they just got bored.
Yeah.
The soldiers got
Yeah.
bored.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Something really upsetting that has happened. Like, I know, we saw this happen before. And then when your group left, I remember seeing your picture, and it was the first time that I knew someone. Like, I know who you are. I've seen you. We've met before.
Yeah.
You've always been very kind. As I said earlier, you like smiled to my daughter at a protest, and I really appreciated that. And to see someone and to hear like, okay, well, that we don't hear from him anymore. Like, I got worried. I called some friends of yours, and I heard about what a nice guy you are. I mean, I knew that, but I heard like you're gentle, it wouldn't hurt a fly, really giving and principled person. And one of the things that really was crushing is after you got out and I shared your story. This is a long question, but I think you might appreciate it. There was I've been talking to this guy who's a Zionist. We get along on a lot of things, but we really don't on this issue.
Yeah.
And he said about you went out and there's the wound on your hand, there's the broken ribs, and he said, well, this all lies. And it hurts so much because it's like, no, why are we denying this person's experience? And then the more I look into it, the more there are these videos that deconstruct what you said, the size of your bandage, the way you were moving, saying, oh, it doesn't look like he has broken ribs. How is it to face that level of denialism when you're returning? Because you've experienced it.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me first say, just for the record, that I thought I had broken ribs and a collapsed lung. I did not have broken ribs, but my whole rib cage is swollen, and we're now like 3 weeks after the beating, and it's still painful. The stab in my hand is very, very true, and it is the only knife wound in the whole flotilla. And there's a reason for that. We might get into why I particularly was stabbed. But the denial is horrible. And on my Facebook page, for example, you see when I put the picture that thanks to Itmar Ben Gvir, he's the one who published it. We would not have had source to it if they didn't. And I showed how we were treated and how the Balaklava soldiers are on top with their machine guns pointing at us. And there were also soldiers on our level smacking anybody on the head who didn't have his head down. You realize that, again, it's like we were talking about the punishment and how to get through it. It's also to understand where those Zionists, the pro-Israel lobby, where their mindset is. Their only escape, if they have any humanity in them, their only escape is to convince themselves that these are lies.
Yeah.
Because if they don't do that, their humanity would get to them. And then they won't be able to defend Israel anymore. So it's such a complex situation that really needs you to understand the other side. But with all calmness and confidence, I tell anybody and everybody what happened did happen. And that only shows that this is not like acting like a state anymore. It's acting like a band of terrorists. And the fact that you wear a uniform doesn't make you not a terrorist.
Yeah.
The act that you have a land and you call it a state doesn't make you immune from being a terrorist entity.
Yeah, the fact that you buy your weapons directly from Lockheed Martin doesn't mean that it's
exactly.
Yeah.
So it just makes you try more to understand how to tackle the issue, but it doesn't make me feel like sorry for myself that I'm not being believed or anything of the sort.
There was this. I found this really interesting. There was an interview with you in the Canadian Jewish News a couple of years back about a friend. You had these friendships with some Zionists, and you guys would meet and discuss your differences. And October 7th really strained that.
Yes.
But you managed to kind of come back and find common ground.
With a few.
Yeah.
With a very small few. Because after October 7th, there are people who shut you out 100% and sent you a few insults and blocked you.
Yeah.
And those were, I would say, At least 50% of those who were involved, I was involved with in some sort of dialogue or the other. There are people from the Jewish community who I stood shoulder to shoulder with against Bill 21, for example.
Yeah.
And they would come whenever I invite them to an action or whatever. And then October 7th happens, and all of a sudden, I am a terrorist. I am pro-Hamas. I want to destroy Israel. And it goes like, off the rails right away.
Yeah. But there were some that you were able to repair, some of these relationships.
Absolutely.
And how do you, like, I'm saying this out of genuine curiosity because I too have lost a lot of friends in the community, and I don't know what's going to happen next, but I see what happened. Like, I see that you were able to repair it, and I think it's like, especially given everything you've been through, and given, like, you have a personal connection to Palestine. You were raised in Egypt, but I think your wife was your wife is Palestinian.
My first wife was
your first wife was Palestinian.
Yes.
And like you, and yet still you can repair those relationships. How do you do that?
Let's look at human relations in the right way. I think it takes two to repair. It takes one to damage.
Yeah.
And there is proverbs about accidents and stuff, and no, it takes one to make an accident. It takes two to avoid the accident.
Yeah.
And so with the ones that the relationship was repaired and we started to understand each other after October 7th, it took both sides. It took both sides to try to think that person, I know him or her well enough that they can't be what I imagined on October 8th.
Yeah.
And it was a road. It was a long road. Nothing happened overnight. But I have to say as well that October 7th didn't break my relationship with everybody and anybody who identifies with Israel.
Yeah.
Some people understood that trying to explain October 7th doesn't mean condoning October 7th. And also, till today, we continue to say October 7th is not a starting point. It did not come out of vacuum. And if we all want to understand the reality of the world we're living in, we have to accept that.
Yeah. No, it's you can't prevent something if you don't understand why it happened, right?
Yeah.
And I remember going back to the Stephen Harper days when I think Justin Trudeau said we have to understand the root causes of terrorism, and that was used against him again and again. Yeah. But it's actually a very thoughtful way of looking at it.
Yes.
We should understand the root causes of violence.
Yes, and then Justin Trudeau comes and says, "I'm a Zionist."
Yeah.
Which is
He's in the political wilderness now, enjoying his life with a pop star.
Yes,
so, guy, I guess there are worse places to retire. I had heard that, we all heard our government, our prime minister, condemn Ben-Gvir and condemn that video, but on the ground, did you really feel supported by your government when you were released?
I didn't feel supported by my government while I was there, which was the crucial time to feel supported, because we, different from 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, we were attacked live on TV, on our YouTube channels at least.
Yeah. In international waters.
In international waters. But the all governments in the West knew this was happening. All governments in the world knew that how harsh the previous flotilla was dealt with. And through Ben-Gvir this time, they knew before I reached the shores of Israel, before I was in Ashdod, the government of Canada and all Western governments knew what was happening, because that video was released while we were still on the boat, while I was still on the boat. So because there were two prisoner boats. So one of them had reached shore and Ben-Gvir had started his harassment and his punishment to people, and we were still on the boat. So the government of Canada knew that this was happening while it was happening. Now, why weren't there Canadian consular assistants at least waiting for us in Ashdod is a failure by the Canadian government. We had connections with Adala, an Israeli, Palestinian Israeli human rights law firm, and we had their lawyers there. And when I asked one of the lawyers, where are the Canadian consular services to stand with us while we are accused of entering Israel illegally, which is the funniest accusation that can happen to people abducted from international waters, really. She said they may see you tomorrow morning. That was that's what she knew, the Adala lawyer. So no, I'm not satisfied at all with what Canada is doing. I met a couple of MPs who said we were very worried about you.
Yeah. Not worried enough to do something.
And exactly, and one of them is in the government, not just an MP. And he said that, and I was like, I really was dumbstruck. I couldn't even say.
Yeah.
So what did you do about it? You're not just a backbencher MP. You're in the government.
Yeah.
You can call your counterpart in Israel real time and say even, I mean, I don't care about myself, but you could even say, I'm concerned about this guy who I know, that's not what I'm asking for, but I'm just saying he could have done that, but they did nothing. And then what Mark Carney did, and there is a question that we have all to ask ourselves, why did Mark Carney talk to the Israeli president, which is a ceremonial role? Why didn't he talk to Benjamin Netanyahu, who is his counterpart?
Yeah.
Did Netanyahu refuse to talk to him? It was pathetic. And then the statements issued by both offices of both Carney and the Israeli president, there is slight difference between the two statements, but if you put them together, like about 5% is talking about what happened to us, and the other 90%, 95% is talking about how we love each other and support each other as two countries and whatever. So no, I'm not satisfied, and we're still demanding and waiting for an answer from the office of Mark Carney, from the office of Anita Anand, to our request to meet. They won't even meet you. They didn't say no yet.
Okay.
But all the signs that we are saying say no. I mean, and
they're not warmly embracing the
No. We didn't get any like positive answer or semi-positive or hopeful answer till this point, although that letter was sent already over a week ago.
The lobby has a ton of influence nationally, but locally they have influence too. We reported a couple of weeks back about how one of the mayor's main fundraisers works for CJ. He's the regional director for CJ PAC.
Yes.
Just the other day at City Hall, during I think the Ville Marie Borough Council meeting, Leslie Roberts, who was he went on a paid reporting trip to Israel and spread disinformation, of course, almost like on behalf of the Israeli government.
Yeah.
He was asked to condemn Itamar Ben-Gvir. It's a bit of a long clip, but I think maybe Justin could show us.
Mr. Roberts, since you refused to answer the question of my colleague who was here earlier, I'd like to give you one more opportunity to condemn a renowned international criminal who has recognized Ben-Gvir.
I think the answer has been said already. This is my job is municipal, and that's what I do, and that's the answer I have for you.
He just can't bring himself.
No.
He wants to condemn the people who hanged Ben-Gvir in effigy by saying, look, this is anti-Semitic, even though they were also hanging Trump and Netanyahu. But he will not condemn the person who is passing a law that would only apply to hanging Palestinians and who would be sanctioned, who is being sanctioned by Canada and who would be arrested if he came to Canada.
Yes.
That guy they can't condemn, but the protesters in the streets who go a little too far, those guys, they're getting investigated by the police.
Yeah. And as someone who was tortured recently by Ben-Gvir's apparatus, I would always give the benefit of the doubt, and I have been doing that for decades now, pushing against this mix between anti-Semitism and criticism of Israel and Israeli actions and politics. And this is another thing that's really, I mean, you asked me about when will things change? And this is something as well that I don't know when will it change. When will we as a society, even those who write, even those who run think tanks, would be able to say it clearly that there is a big difference between anti-Semitism, which is hating somebody because he is Jewish or because he comes from a certain lineage, compared to criticizing and condemning and attacking and even swearing at a politician because of what he is doing as a politician, or a country because what it's doing as a country. that's also, this confusion is not helping us reach a position that is
We're not working towards a solution.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think this is one of the things we need to resolve.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of the battles we need to win to be able to win the war.
And I mean, in fairness, there are also figures like Nick Fuentes, figures on the right who are embracing this anti-Israel thing, but not because of any kind of sympathy for the Palestinians. It is out of what appears to be an overt feeling of anti-Semitism. And that is dangerous, but it seems mostly to be coming from the right. And yet we don't hear this from our politicians.
And I don't at all disagree that anti-Semitism exists. I don't at all disagree that all peoples could be subjected to hate because of who they are, not because of what they do. That happens everywhere, and it's unfortunately, I am also in the forefront of condemning my own people meaning like culturally or religiously or ethnically, when I see them crossing the line. And because there is a lot of misunderstanding also in conflating these things together in many communities.
To me, one of the things that's frustrating is, like, you'll hear someone like Netanyahu make it so that Israel and Judaism are the same thing. So if you criticize one, you're criticizing the other. But if you're proud of one, you're proud of the other. So like, to some people, the two are indistinguishable. So they will start to say, not Israel is doing this, but the Jews are doing this.
Yes.
And that is extremely dangerous.
Yeah. And he wants it to be that way because he benefits from that.
It feeds into that
Absolutely.
the feedback loop.
Absolutely.
I want to end on a slightly less horrible note. I read some of your poetry the other day. Do you mind if I read some of it to you?
Please.
Okay, you wrote a book called When You Love a Palestinian Woman, and there's a couple of excerpts from one of these poems that I absolutely love. When you love a Palestinian woman, your heart is tuned to the beat of a heart that can never forget. When you love a Palestinian woman, you love every wave that kisses the shores of her land, every olive tree in Galilee, every particle of salt in the Dead Sea. When you love a Palestinian woman, you love a spirit that inherited the will to stand, and eyes that terrify guards at checkpoints. I love that line. In a way no man can. How can any man love but a Palestinian woman? I don't know how you're going to respond to that, but I just want to say that I read it and I was absolutely charmed by it, and thank you for contributing that.
The seed of that poem came when I was sitting in the Hesha refugee camp in the West Bank, or close to the camp. I don't remember if it was somebody who was in the camp or from the village next door. And she said that I'm taking care of the 7 kids. I am also a community organizer. And she was a woman in her 50s, I guess, or something like that. Very powerful, you know. She says that the men go and do an open action, whether it's a demonstration or an armed resistance or whatever, and then they're taken to jail. And she said it, I'm not minimizing what they did or the punishment they're subjected to, but the burden of continuity falls on my shoulder, on her shoulder.
Yeah.
And so that's where the strength of the Palestinian women, who are not jailed at the same percentage at all compared to the men in the West Bank. Let's talk about the West Bank here. And they have the burden of carrying the community, the society, the movement.
It falls apart without them.
And also the part about checkpoint guards is also true, because I mean, we as humans at the end of the day tend to combat violence with violence. So it is easier for the checkpoint guard to push somebody who's trying to say, but when a woman is looking at them in the eye, it is really more difficult. It's more terrifying.
Their sense of humanity.
Yes.
And you find it, and
yes.
you can see that human being in there.
Yeah.
You can see a trace of shame or something.
Absolutely.
Whereas maybe men would not get that out of the guards. They would just get a beating.
And you know, that brings us 360 degrees maybe to where we started, about how I managed, or how we managed on this flotilla. And it was really a huge success in that aspect, that we did not give them the chance to be more violent against us, because there was only, when people told me before I leave, take care, I always said, the maximum I can do is what I can do, but my safety depends on the foolishness of the most foolish of the Israelis that will deal with me. Yeah. I can't control my safety. I can only control myself. But I guess with controlling myself, with controlling ourselves, we managed to disarm them to a certain extent. But they were intent on torture and violence. They were intent on teaching us a lesson. But I guess, strangely enough, as we came back, so many people are saying, when is the next flotilla?
Yeah. Thank you for coming back. And thank you for taking the time to sit down with us and talk to us about this. I can't imagine it's easy, but I really appreciate that you took the time to do it. Thank you so much, Ehab.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.